Hey, Stoney here with another game of Mechabellum. If you're a fan of big lasers, you'll love this one. Let's go. At the bottom here, I'll be playing as a marksman specialist, and my opponent, Goff the Great, is playing as a quick supply specialist. This is the final game in the weekend tournament Americas, and our MMR is around 1800. Right off the bat, I am looking at marksmen and mustangs. I think this is a very favorable position for me, seeing how I'm starting off with bands and stormcallers. Both of these units are decent running into mustangs and marksmen. I think what I really need is just some chaff clear, because it could easily use something like crawlers to disrupt my damage from the stormcallers. So I added 2 arc lights, and of course, with my level 3 marksman, I should be able to tank whatever he throws at me in the first round. Now, my opponent decided to go one-sided, having a bit of an asymmetrical build. I think it makes sense because he knows that his round, or at least the first round, is most likely going to be lost because of my Stormcallers. I'm surprised they didn't go with Crawlers. I think that would have been a bit more problematic, but then he wouldn't be able to clear off my fence as quickly. Okay, so once the frontline units are cleared, and it's just between Stormcallers and Marksmen, and the Marksmen will be the losers. Alright, round 2, we got some interesting units. I think Fire Badgers would be pretty decent for my opponent if he decides to do so. On my side, I think level 2 Crawlers is pretty good. Rhino, probably a pretty decent option as well, seeing how there's not a lot of damage except just these marksmen. Yeah, so Fire Badgers is going to be a pretty good one. Not only it tanks at the front line, it also clears up a lot of the crawlers, which are typically decent against mustangs at the same level. I just decided to take the Rhino because I needed a bit of pushing power, especially into this line here. And also Rhino with 38,000 HP should serve as a big tank that's kind of tying everything up in their place, allowing my Stormcallers to fire from afar. Alright, starting to add crawlers on the bottom here. A late arriving chaff. Alright, my opponent is also supplementing his position with crawlers of his own. Now, I knew he was probably going to go with Fire Badgers. I wasn't sure the position of these Fire Badgers. I wanted to still have crawlers on the right flank here, and they are going to come in. The Rhino in the middle is doing a lot of work, but so is the Fire Badgers right here. I think it's going to come in and kill the rest of my Stormcallers. It's going to be a bit problematic. Now, fortunately, I do have a level 3 marksman. And I wonder if I can finish off these Badgers before they take tower. And it looks like I can. What's unfortunate, though, is that the level 3 marksman is being locked on by his marksman. And it will eventually die. I do have a few Stormcallers. I think they should be able to get enough damage out. No, just missing one volley here. Nope, maybe one more. Right there. And it misses completely. That's alright. Round 3. Let's slow this down a little bit. Subsidized Steel Ball was the choice for me. It's a pretty straightforward choice because of the Fire Badgers. Once you have Fire Badgers on the line here, it is very difficult to push units into his line, especially if the Fire Badgers get napalm, right? So if you have crawlers, then essentially this area here would just be a crawler graveyard. The only way you want to deal with these Fire Badgers when they're on the line is to have ranged steel balls, because one, they won't be able to put that many chaff in front of them, which means they'll be exposed to the steel balls fairly soon. And two, once the Fire Badgers are gone, your late, and I'm talking ultra late arriving chaff, can then make through the line. Remember, napalm do burn the ground for 20 seconds. That's a lot of fire for a very long time. So you just got to be very careful with the positioning of your chaff. My opponent decided to add even more Fire Badgers on the side here. But it seems like my steel ball strategy is paying off at the front. However, my opponent did also get steel ball and subsidized steel ball. And this is a very smart move. I think he is preemptively preparing for steel balls of my own, and sometimes the best counter to a unit is just the mirror of that particular unit. So with that, he is going to get a very decent victory here in round 3. Alright. Let's take a look at round 4. First of all, reinforcement. Elite Crawlers is useless because of the Fire Badgers. Oil is interesting because then you can set fire up into the opponent's board. My opponent decided to skip, which made sense. So I wanted to set this oil up here. I may not want to ignite it on the first turn, right? The first turn I just want to slow them down. Oil works really well with Stormcrawlers because the longer you can hold your opponent's army in position, the more shots that your Stormcrawlers can fire, and the more shots, or more rockets rather, will more likely to land. I got Steel Balls to directly answer these Fire Badgers. I am expecting some sort of chaff, if not this turn, a subsequent turn. My opponent is getting Steel Balls on the other side. I think he is preparing for some sort of mobile beacon play because it is a little weak here on my right hand side. A bubble is added for the purpose of just tanking the initial few shots from these Fire Badgers. Most of my units will probably move out of this bubble with the exception of the Stormcrawlers. My opponent is very smart of getting Steel Balls to counter my units because I am going pretty hard into Steel Balls. Here is the mobile beacon play here. I was a little wary of something like this happening, so I did add a bubble. This is nothing that I should be scared of because of the ranged Steel Balls, but as well as Stormcrawlers. So even if they come in, it should be okay. However, I may not be able to save that shield bubble though. Alright, Steel Ball doing work on the other side. Miscalculated the shield bubble right here on the left hand side. I thought my Steel Balls would have been a little bit more forward, but it's they were just inside the shield bubble. But that's okay. It allowed them to tank quite a few shots and get rid of his units, so I think it was money well spent with the shield bubble. And my Steel Balls are also getting rid of his Mustangs on the other side. Now here's the decision that I need to make. I've seen quite a few Mustangs and I've also seen Steel Balls. So there's a very good chance that my opponent just want to go hard into Ball Stang composition. With Ball Stang, the Steel Balls, yes, they're quite powerful, but the real MVP of that strategy should be the Mustangs. And once the Mustangs level up, they can become very problematic. Alright, with unit drop cards, I took the Wraith. I expect my opponent to either take the Wraith or the Phoenix. Melting Point and Sandworm at this point against my board is a bit risky because of the number of high-level ranged Steel Balls that I already have. So they're pretty good against these two ground units. We both took Wraith. I think that's a good choice for my opponent because I don't actually have anti-air in the side of the board. Ended up adding a few more Fangs. I think it's just to prevent any sort of surprises. Well, this one is going to ignite this board here, so I want everything to burn. But my main problem, though, is I don't have anything to deal with this Wraith. My opponent has Marksman, so he doesn't need to worry about that. But for me, I do not. So I added a few squads of Mustangs. One is that they complement well with these Steel Balls. And two is to provide some support with the anti-air. Eventually, I'll need to have a firm answer if my opponent decides to put this Wraith on the board. Alright, so I was talking earlier about the Mustangs and how they're MVP. One simple way to overcome the Mustangs from leveling too much is simply hit the armor key on these Steel Balls. Right now, my Steel Balls are being protected by some sort of chaff clear, which means when they're coming in, the first target should be my opponent's Steel Balls instead of Crawlers or Fangs. And that just means they will also be the target of Mustangs. So if I have armor on these Steel Balls, they will live forever. And they will prevent the Mustangs from leveling up. Alright. I am able to take the fight on the right hand side, but I am unable to seal the deal with this level 3 Wraith. So I'm going to speed this up a little bit. The good thing with the Steel Balls is that they're now getting a lot of experience killing everything on the ground. Alright. We're looking at round 6. Fire is picked up by my opponent. I think fire is also a good option for me. But because my opponent already have Fire Badgers, I figure it might be better just to take an item because I already have the Mustangs. The fire is going down on the right-hand side. I wasn't sure where he's going to go. I think there's, a greater chance of him going on the left-hand side, being the strong side. But no, my opponent did decide to put a fire on the other side. I added 1 melting point just to answer this Wraith here. I needed something to get rid of this crawler so that my steel balls can quickly lock on to the fire badger. So that's going to be a missile, hopefully, on this side of the board. These fangs are enjoying that initial fire from the fire badgers. Fire from the opponent here. And now he's adding scorpions. Scorpions at the 1 level below actually aren't that much of a threat against steel balls because they do take quite a few shots. So for example, a level 1 scorpion does take 2 shots to get rid of a level 2 ball. So I'm not too worried about it at this point. However, once they start to level up, they could pose to be a real threat. So my goal here, first of all, the Wraith is getting taken care of. On the other side of the board, the Wraith is tanking quite a bit of damage. My steel balls took the energy absorption technology this round, which means once they're on target, they should be able to deal a lot of damage while preventing themselves from being killed. And as you can see here, that is essentially what's happening. Alright, so the balls continue to level, and once they hit a certain point, they will become very difficult to deal with. So a pretty good round for me, and my board is maturing, which means my opponent will have compounding issues as the game goes on. Speed Spec is very enticing. I just wasn't sure if that's the best card for take at this point. I mean, all of my units are extremely close to each other. It makes sense for my opponent to take Speed Spec because I am playing Stormcrawlers, even though there's just one of them. Speed Spec does reduce the amount of, or decrease the accuracy for this Stormcrawlers because the missiles tend to travel further behind the units. All right, so my opponent started to add level 2 Scorpions. I think that's an excellent choice. Level 2 Scorpions does one-shot a level 3 Steel Ball. Right, so 22,000 against 21,000 of HP. They do not one-shot level 4 steel ball, so there's a bit of advantage there. And the thing with Scorpion is that they outscale steel balls in terms of their breakpoint, which means a level 3 Scorpion will probably kill not just level 4 but also level 5 steel balls. I would need level 6 steel balls in order to defend or not get one-shotted by a level 3 Scorpion. So it's a pretty dangerous setup. Another thing you notice on my side of the board is that I'm having a bit of chaff clear problem, I think, especially with the late arriving chaffs. So right here in the center, I think is a great example, right? Because I have a bit of a chaff clearing problems, then the steel balls will kind of get into your face, and that is not good. All right. So Scorpions are doing work. Steel balls on the other side, they are doing work, but they're also being shut down by these level 3 Mustangs. They're extremely deadly. So a huge round going to my opponent. So far, it's just been a very even game, with us trading blow for blow. Sledgehammer makes sense for me at this point. I wanted to go Wasp as well, but then my opponent already has so many Mustangs. Vulcan would be another great option, just so that I can take care of that initial chaff. But also, Vulcan do stay in the game quite a bit longer than the rest of my chaff clear, so I was hoping to use that as my late game chaff clear as well. Range goes on to the melting point and also multi-melter. What I wanted to do is I wanted to use the steel balls as a frontline chaff, and I wanted to use my melting point in the later stage of the game to deal with both the medium-sized unit, as I've seen there are quite a number of steel balls on the board, but also with a bit of a smaller unit like the Mustang. So multi-point or multi-melter does shoot 5 rays, and against smaller units, they're actually pretty efficient. Okay, so on my opponent's side, I've seen Mecdiv on the steel balls to create even more chaos in the later stage of the game. We have even more Mustangs being added down, so now it's a full-on Mustang carry for my opponent. So it's going to go into Mustang, Scorpion. And for me, I'm going to have steel balls to tank. I'm going to have multi-melter as my final line of defense. Once these guys level up, right, once you give them energy absorption, they can actually live for a very long time. So I'm hoping to build this really strong late game board. Alright, multi-melter doing work, getting rid of multiple of these medium-sized units, and also locking onto the Scorpion, and that's pretty huge. Right? If this multi-melter can get rid of this level 2 Scorpion, that means there's no more firepower right there in the center of the board. And it did. Now, unfortunately, my right-hand side is just completely being dominated by my opponent. So even with the multi-melter in the fight, it's just not enough to stop this sort of horde, this ocean of units coming in from the right-hand side. And I'm in a bit of a trouble at this point. Oh no, okay. We are getting down to just under 1,000 HP. Alright. Senior Man is offered. I did take Senior Man because I am planning to put down quite a few melting points. My opponent took range on the Scorpions. Very powerful, because now the Scorpions officially outrange my melting point. So that's very problematic. I added 3 more melting point. And now it's just a question of getting chap. And for chap, I decided to take armor on the steel balls. I've noticed there's just so many Mustangs, especially these high level 4 Mustangs. They're just doing so much against my steel balls. So I took armor, and I'm hoping that these steel balls will stay in the fight a bit longer, allowing my melting points to actually do the real damage. I continue to not have a real answer here with these crawlers. I just don't have something that kills them fast enough, and I don't want to spend money to get fire badgers or wraith because they already have anti-air marksman. So it's a bit of a problem here. I always use the missile, but that continues to be a drain of resources. Alright. So the oil gets ignited. Multiple melting point. They're doing a lot of work. They're getting rid of the sledgehammers. They're getting rid of the balls that are coming forward. But I think the real problem right now is the Scorpions. Now that they have range, and this level 3 Scorpion, they're actually going to pop my steel balls very quickly. Yeah, with range, the Scorpions do a ton of damage. And these multi-crawlers are just having so much problem clearing out the Scorpions as well as these Mustangs. So it's a bit of a rough round for me. Now, I do have a level 3 melting point, soon to be level 4. Ooh, it's a close one, but I think I'll survive with just 75 HP. Oh boy. Alright. Okay, so I needed more chaff. I needed a way to clear his chaff, especially these late arriving Mustangs. So first, let's focus on the Mustangs. I feel like if I can get the Mustangs, my melting point then can get onto the sledgehammers, the steel balls, and also the Scorpions, and they do fairly well. This is a rough round because my opponent has double abilities, so it's got Electromag, but also Incendiary Bomb. I was expecting the Incendiary Bomb to go in a line here, but I guess my opponent just really wants to get rid of my high-level Mustangs on the other side. Which makes sense. I mean, he has been losing on this side. I started to add bubbles across the board. Just protecting everything that I can. I think the fire is going to do really well against the Mustangs. And speaking of Mustangs, my opponent took high explosive ammo for the sole purpose of just getting rid of my chaff a little bit quicker. Because he knows that with nothing in front of my multi-melters, these ranged Scorpions can absolutely destroy them. And he has so many. He's got 7 Scorpions, and I can see him continue to add more. Alright. Let's slow this down a little bit and watch the battle. On the left-hand side, it does look like my Scorpion, my melters are getting onto the target. My right-hand side is a bit iffy because the only thing that's kind of defending are my steel balls, and they are being gunned down by so many units. Now the armor is helping quite a bit. As you can see, the Mustangs are wasting a lot of damage on the steel balls. But I think right now the real problem is this Scorpions. Alright, I got my level 2 melting point on a big Scorpion, but can I kill it though? Can I kill it? I think it's just barely. On the other side, I do have multiple melting points and also on the Scorpion. I think this one might be able to get the Scorpion. And I did. I got 2 Scorpions running over from the other side. Not too worried because I do have level 2 Stormcrawlers and they do decent against Scorpions. Alright, we're going to get a power debuff and I'm going to get his units. Just barely winning the round here. But with this unit, I am able to bring my opponent all the way down to 840. So right now, we're both 1 hit away from losing this game. So now it's just, what do we want to do about it? Alright, first of all, unit drop. I think Vulcan makes a lot of sense in this game. I have been struggling with Chaff Clear, and with so many Mustangs on the board, I think Vulcan will actually do amazing. So that once I get rid of the Mustangs in front of the Scorpions, then my multi-melters can get to the Scorpions. I also took energy absorption on the melter now that they're more leveled up. Once they have energy absorption and onto a Scorpion, I think they will essentially outlast the Scorpion. My opponent took triple sandworms into this massive flank. I'm not entirely sure how effective this one is going to be, considering I do have multi-point melting point that's level 4. So they can actually deal pretty decent damage. But what is going to be a problem is that with the replicate, right, with all this distraction here, these melters aren't able to get onto these Scorpions now with acid. So it's anyone's game, but I think I'm going to have to give points to my opponent's board. Acid Scorpion against multi-point melting points. Once the melting points are in the acid, it's not the Scorpions that's going to kill it, it's the Mustangs. Because now they're receiving 250% more damage. So we're going to have to keep an eye on here on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, things are more or less the same. We have a few more steel balls, but they're mostly as late-game chaff. My Vulcans should provide a pretty decent cover for something like that. Ooh, this Vulcan right here at the front is getting targeted right away. It's going to get acided and it's going to die right away. Melting point. Ooh, not able to lock onto the sandworms because of the acid. And you can now start to see just how powerful these acids are. Okay, so the frontline chaff are being cleared out. We have a few melting points standing strong, but oh, just look at that. Multiple Scorpions shooting in the same melting point, bringing it down immediately. It doesn't matter if you have energy absorption. It's just not going to out-heal the damage that the Scorpions do. And with that, with one fell swoop, my opponent is going to claim victory on this game. An excellent game played by my opponent. I think his board is scaling a little bit slower than mine, but eventually reached to a point that it completely demolishes my board. So yeah, really well played. And I hope you enjoyed this game, and I will see you on the next one.
Prepare your tactics. Mechabellum's calling. Deploy your fortress. The battlefield's alive with swarms.